Hi, it's Katrina. In this video, we'll be diving into the controversial claims and intriguing evidence that suggests Antarctica may hold secrets that could rewrite human history. From strange skulls and ancient maps to tales of extraterrestrial beings and lost cities, Antarctica has captured the imagination of explorers and conspiracy theorists alike. So grab your parka and let's take a look at some of the secrets hiding under the ice. Atlantis in Antarctica? Have scientists found Atlantis? Some bizarre structures have been discovered underneath half a mile of ice in Antarctica that could be remnants from the legendary lost city of Atlantis. If the incredible discovery is proven real, history as we know it is going to change, whether it's Atlantis or not. The idea of Atlantis has captivated imaginations for centuries. Greek philosopher Plato first described Atlantis in his dialogues, painting a picture of a technologically advanced society ruled by demigods. These demigods created a utopian civilization that became too arrogant, and so the gods destroyed this city as punishment. Atlantis was centered on an island, or many concentric islands or rings separated by massive moats. There were canals leading through gateways from the outermost ring to the very center of the city, like highways. From the air, Atlantis would have looked a lot like a giant maze of watery corridors and huge strips of land with shining buildings made from glass and gold. According to Plato, Atlantis had an abundance of wildlife, rare foods, and all the pleasures you could imagine. On the central island was their capital. This is the one thing a lot of people miss when discussing Atlantis. It wasn't just a city, it was a country. Their capital was at the center of the island rings, but their territory was enormous. How enormous? Nobody knows for sure since it's never been discovered, but Plato's description makes it sound at least the size of Spain. Plato claimed that all of this happened 9,000 years before his own time. He told this story around 360 BC, which means Atlantis is between 11,000 and 12,000 years old. The Antarctic discovery, if confirmed, could provide the first tangible evidence of Atlantis' existence. However, the challenges of exploring and excavating beneath the Antarctic ice are still practically impossible, even with today's technology, so it makes it difficult to determine the true nature of these structures. The possibility of Atlantis' existence raises intriguing questions about the history of human civilization. Could this ancient civilization have advanced far beyond our current understanding of technology and society? The answers to these questions might lie buried under the ice, but we need to just go and check. Mysterious skulls. The icy wastes of Antarctica hold countless secrets, but one of the most intriguing and controversial is the discovery of human remains dating back centuries before the continent was officially discovered. There have been rumors of ancient civilizations and even extraterrestrial beings inhabiting Antarctica going around for decades. A discovery of some strange, elongated skulls has been floating around online. Some believe these skulls are the remnants of aliens who visited Earth. They claim the skulls are proof that aliens or the Anunnaki or some other mystical or otherworldly race of beings was in Antarctica before it was covered in ice. If you haven't heard of the Antarctic skulls before, I'm not surprised. You won't find much information about them in mainstream scientific articles. There is no proof that any of this is real. The reports that I've come across claim that an archaeologist named Damien Waters found the elongated skulls in the Lapai region. Damien is supposedly an archaeologist with the Smithsonian Institute of New York. However, Damien Waters doesn't seem to exist, and neither does a region named Lapai in Antarctica. From what I can gather, the reports have no merit. Maybe elongated skulls were found, but if that's true, then they have disappeared. What I can tell you for certain is that in 1985, Chilean biologist Dr. Daniel Torres made a groundbreaking discovery on Yamana Beach. He found the skeleton of a young woman who had lived in Antarctica around 1819. This finding challenged the prevailing belief that the continent was uninhabited until the early 19th century. However, the origin of these remains is a subject of hot debate. Some experts suggest that the woman was an indigenous Chilean who had ventured to Antarctica, perhaps for fishing or whaling. Others propose a more sinister possibility. She may have been part of an early Antarctic expedition, treated as an unwilling passenger, and ultimately discarded. It's one of the most controversial subjects to talk about when it comes to Antarctica. Dr. Torres found proof that indigenous Chileans made the first human landing in Antarctica. And now let's take a quick break because it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to the Antichrist and Gorgie Too Good for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this, because we have a lot. Shifting poles and displaced crusts. According to ancient Mexican myths, 12,500 years ago, a global cataclysm was unleashed. In Mesoamerican codices, there are stories written about a great disaster in the year 10,500 BC. The disaster ushered in 4 periods of global climate catastrophes, each one destroying a civilization. In 1872, scientists started wondering what may have caused this great disaster. A disaster you're going to be hearing about a lot today. Charles Etienne Brasseur de Bourbourg suggested it had something to do with a shift in the Earth's axis. His idea, almost 200 years ago, was the formation of the cataclysmic pole shift hypothesis. Considered pseudoscience today, the hypothesis claims that sudden shifts in the axis of rotation of Earth causes floods and violent tectonic events. When the axis of rotation changes, the way we rotate changes. The sudden disturbance has dramatic effects on the weather. It makes earthquakes shake the ground, and it unleashes floods. The problem with that theory is that nobody's ever been able to prove it. It's all just speculative, just like a similar theory called the crustal displacement hypothesis. Scientist Charles Hapgood was very curious about natural disasters and how they may have destroyed civilizations. He came up with an idea just like the one about the poles shifting, only a little different. Charles suspected that too much polar ice accumulating at the poles destabilizes the planet. He thought the destabilization caused crustal displacement, or moving the Earth's crust. Charles argued this could happen every 5,000 years or so. As soon as enough ice accumulates at the poles, there's a big shift. When that happens, the continents play musical chairs. There are widespread floods that destroy everything in their path. Land masses go on vacation. If Charles' theory is ever proven, it has big consequences for world history. It means that an island in the Atlantic Ocean could have relocated itself to the bottom of the world, like say where Antarctica is today. This theory could prove that Antarctica used to be much, much farther north, where it may have been home to a civilization. Maybe the civilization of Atlantis, or maybe some precursor to the Egyptians. The possibilities are endless. Just use your imagination. A hole without a clue. In 2024, a hole appeared in Antarctica. To say that the experts are confused is an understatement. No one knows why a pit opened on the surface of Antarctica or what might be found underneath it. Let me start off by saying this is no ordinary hole. It is an abyss. It's about 30,000 square miles, making it nearly as large as Lake Superior. Some scientists have blamed climate change, but the truth is that there is no explanation. Atmospheric scientist Kent Moore is a professor at the University of Toronto. In a recent interview, Kent said the hole is, and I quote, "quite remarkable. It looks like you just punched a hole in the ice." This isn't the only time a hole like this has been spotted either. It's becoming such a frequent issue that scientists have come up with a name for the phenomenon. They now refer to these sudden holes as polynia. This hole in particular was first seen in the 1970s. Scientists were stunned back then, and they are just as shocked today. The thing about the hole is that it left 50 years ago. It appeared, disappeared for several decades, and now it's back. What in the world is causing this? Without a connection between climate change and the appearance of the enormous holes, scientists don't know what to say. It's possible that something else is happening beneath the ice that scientists can't see. Perhaps something is generating a lot of energy. Enough energy to melt a monster-sized hole in the middle of the coldest place on Earth. Fragments of a lost world. Thanks to satellite technology, the remnants of a lost continent have been found underneath Antarctica. Actually, the remains of a few continents have been found. This is a big piece of geological history, and it wouldn't have been possible to figure out if not for some impressive technology. The European Space Agency's Gravity Field and Ocean Circulation Explorer satellite produced incredible maps of the planet's gravitational field. Geologists combined those maps with seismological reports to create an unprecedented view of the crust underneath Antarctica. Scientists from Germany's Kiel University were the geniuses behind this new study. Their map is a CT scan of Earth's body where it hides underneath the ice. The map doesn't show any structures that could prove Atlantis or another civilization lived on Antarctica. This is strictly geological. What scientists identified were fractured layers of crust. The fractured layers look just like the crusts of continents and coastlines from other parts of the world. They look like puzzle pieces, and they match perfectly with coastline puzzle pieces from other land masses. For example, the fragmented layers underneath eastern Antarctica could easily fit the coastline of Australia and India. On the other hand, western Antarctica is hiding pieces of crust that could fit the southern tip of South America. These remnants are from a time when all the continents of the world were joined as one. Scientists call the single landmass Pangaea. Remember Pangaea? It lasted for about 100 million years, only starting to splinter 200 million years ago. You used to be able to walk from somewhere like San Diego to Beijing without getting wet. This amazing discovery doesn't necessarily prove Antarctica was home to civilization. But if there were people, or maybe really smart lizards, building cities on Pangaea, it's safe to assume some evidence could still be buried under the ice of the South Pole. The legend of Atlantis under the ice. Okay, let's get back to the strange structures discovered underneath Antarctica. They are so big that some of them are comparable to the Eiffel Tower. But what exactly are they? The discovery was made by a team of scientists from Belgium. They don't think the structures are from the lost city of Atlantis. They believe the tower-like objects are water conduits and sediment ridges hidden beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. Basically, these structures are actually natural tunnels and ridges frozen beneath the ice and not made by humans at all. But of course, it is Antarctica, and it wouldn't be forbidden history if we didn't mention the alternative stories and theories that are floating around. There is still a possibility that a lost city is going to be found hidden below Antarctica. Perhaps even Atlantis, since, after all, the Atlanteans may have controlled the whole world 12,000 years ago. At the beginning of creation, there was water. Even before God got to work making humans and animals, there was water. The book of Genesis starts with, "In the beginning God made from nothing the heavens and the earth. The earth was an empty waste, and darkness was over the deep waters." Water plays such a critical role in the Bible, and actually in most religions. It's no surprise that when God needed to annihilate his first creation, he did so with the primordial waters of the world. Genesis says that God made it rain for 40 days and 40 nights, creating a deluge that wiped out everyone and everything. After Noah and his entourage of animals landed the ark on Mount Ararat, humans got to work rebuilding. I'm telling you this because the Bible's flood myth is only one version of a global flood myth. Variations of the flood story are told by nearly every ancient culture in the world. They all believed there was a mighty global civilization that got wiped out by a flood. Researchers and historians point to the proof of this civilization at Göbekli Tepe. It's considered the oldest ruin in the world, with archaeologists placing it at between 11,500 and 12,500 years old. That's the same time Atlantis supposedly sank beneath the waves. Even though these seem like different ideas, they are all connected by the idea that if you go back far enough in history, everything is connected. All the threads can be traced back to the same source. Some theorists are saying that Göbekli Tepe is directly connected to Atlantis, whether it's buried under Antarctica or not. When the flood swept across the world, Atlantis sank, Göbekli Tepe sank, and the cities of Antarctica sank too. What do you think about this theory? Let me know in the comments. The most destructive volcano in history. If you had to guess what the single most powerful explosive event ever witnessed was, what would you say? Maybe the atomic bomb, right? Not quite. Scientists think the biggest boom seen by human eyes was the eruption of the Thera volcano. This volcano exploded with such force it blew a hole in an island and ended the Bronze Age. 3,500 years ago, the Minoan civilization dominated the Mediterranean. They lived primarily on the Greek islands of Crete and Santorini. Unbeknownst to them, they were living on borrowed time. The Minoans built their great empire on an unstable volcano. When Mount Thera blew its top, the Minoans went extinct. The effects were felt much farther than the Mediterranean. The volcano sent shockwaves as far as China, North America, and even Antarctica. The eruption's impact was far-reaching. Tsunamis ravaged coastal regions, volcanic ash blanketed the sky, and global temperatures plummeted. These catastrophic events led to widespread famine and societal collapse. Many catastrophes have been connected to the Thera eruption, including fan favorites like the end of Atlantis and the biblical plagues. Some scholars have suggested the biblical tale of the 10 plagues being set loose upon Egypt was really the result of Thera's eruption, causing widespread chaos. The precise date of the earthquake was between 1645 and 1500 BC. Not so exact, I know, but that's what the experts have been able to narrow it down to. By 1200 BC, the Bronze Age was over. 60 miles away from the volcano was the island of Crete, home to the bustling capital of the Minoans. These were the people who paved the first roads in Europe, came up with advanced plumbing, and made sophisticated ships for trade and warfare. The Minoan palace of Knossos was where King Minos kept the legendary Minotaur. Knossos has also been connected to Plato's tale of Atlantis, seeing as both were destroyed by a natural disaster. Although there are no eyewitness accounts of what happened, scientists can compare it to more recent earthquakes, like the Krakatoa eruption of 1883. It's likely that the fiery explosion killed 40,000 people instantaneously. It would have produced tsunamis more than 40 feet tall. Volcanic ash was shot into the atmosphere and spread like an endless cloud of pestilence across the whole globe. The explosion was so loud that you could have heard it 3,000 miles away, and you would have felt it in North America, where the sun set and didn't come up again. The volcanic ash in the sky was so thick it caused global temperatures to drop. The only upside was that you got to see some pretty psychedelic sunsets for the next 3 years. Krakatoa was big, but Thera was 5 times bigger. Geologists say it exploded with the energy of several hundred atomic bombs in less than 1 second. The Bronze Age world of the Mediterranean didn't stand a chance. The Minoan civilization had maintained their authority with one of the greatest naval fleets the world had ever seen. That fleet was destroyed by tsunami waves. Practically every coastal village was sucked into the sea. Over the next few decades, widespread starvation crippled practically every culture on the Mediterranean. While Europe collapsed, what was going on in Antarctica? Nobody truly knows, but there are some possibilities. When the ash in the atmosphere reached Antarctica, it could have plunged the South Pole into a new ice age. Maybe Antarctica hadn't been covered in ice just yet, even though scientists think it was. Maybe there have been people living in Antarctica surviving in a brutal environment, but surviving nonetheless. Blocking out the sun for several years would have caused anyone living in Antarctica to go extinct. Searching for evidence of the pyramid builders. What's the deal with the Antarctic pyramid? I'm sure that just like me, you've been seeing images of the hulking pyramid covered in snow online. Some are saying it's proof that the Anunnaki were in Antarctica. Most scientists are calling it a mountain that coincidentally looks like the Great Pyramid of Giza. So what's really going on here? The alleged pyramid is hiding in plain sight in the Ellsworth Mountains, a vast wilderness of craggy peaks stretching several hundred miles. Dr. Mitch Darcy from the German Research Center for Geosciences said it's only a coincidence that this particular peak is pyramid-shaped. Dr. Darcy said it isn't even that special of a coincidence. There are tons of mountain peaks sticking above glaciers and ice sheets all across the continent. Very few scientists are convinced that the pyramid means anything at all. Antarctic researchers claim they have never found any evidence of an artificial building on, in, or under Antarctica, and they have been looking very closely. For the last 60 years, scientists have been collecting data on the terrain under Antarctica. Peter Fretwell from the Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research said they have been using radio echo sounding techniques to peek beneath the surface. You can see the result of their efforts for yourself right now online. All the data has been compiled into a map called BedMap. It's a full topographical map of Antarctica's surface underneath its ice, based on more than 150 million data points. What scientists have done here is pretty amazing. They have stripped the ice away to see Antarctica's terrain beneath, sort of like taking away the water to look at the bottom of the ocean. Yet through all their research, they haven't found a secret lab, a covert base, a lost city, nothing that would make me jump up and down for joy. But that doesn't mean the Mystery Pyramid is a boring mountain. Bethan Davies, a glacial geologist and professor at Newcastle University, said there are cavities in the ice where a lab could theoretically exist. However, Bethan said that even though a lab could be hiding in a crack in the ice overburdened with pressure would eventually crush it. It's unfeasible that anything is hiding between the surface of Antarctica and the surface of its thick ice sheet. Nothing made by human beings, that is. But what if the mile of ice on Antarctica is the perfect place for aliens, surviving Anunnaki, or another unknown entity to build their bases in secret? Now that's an intriguing thought. The Anunnaki trapped under the ice. Imagine a world where gods walked among mortals, shaping their destiny and leaving an indelible mark on human history. According to ancient Sumerian texts, this was once reality. Archaeologists unearthed a tablet in the ancient city of Nippur called Creation of Man. Nippur is in Iraq today, but it used to be in Sumer. It was the seat of worship for the god Enlil, who was known as the ruler of the cosmos. Nippur was also founded around 5000 BC, making the city upwards of 7,000 years old. It may have been one of the first major cities to rise up after the global flood. Creation of Man proved to be one of the most important tablets ever found. Etched onto its surface is the full story of the Sumerian creation myth. The Anunnaki, a race of extraterrestrial beings, came to Earth seeking gold to repair their damaged home planet Nibiru. Using their advanced technology, they genetically engineered humans to serve as their slaves. Some scholars interpreted these texts as saying that the Anunnaki weren't mystical gods. They were physical beings, extraterrestrials who came from another planet. This theory was popularized by author Zecharia Sitchin, who came up with one of the most famous interpretations of the Sumerian creation myth. His idea was that the Anunnaki created human beings to work for them, mining gold. Civil war had ravaged their civilization on the planet Nibiru, so they sought refuge on Earth. The advanced beings used their sophisticated knowledge of biology to take primitive Homo sapiens and make them smarter. The Anunnaki hastened our evolution, growing our brains so that we could do their bidding. Anunnaki's rule over humanity was marked by conflict and division. Interbreeding between Anunnaki and humans led to the creation of hybrid offspring, considered an abomination by the ruling class. The Anunnaki eventually left Earth, assuming they had eradicated their hybrid creations. However, humanity survived, and we may be descendants of those very hybrids. In a similar story, the Bible says that God's angels fell in love with human women and started breeding with them, creating a race of giants called the Nephilim. God was left with no choice but to destroy the human-angel hybrids with a flood. You might be wondering what any of this has to do with Antarctica. That's a good question. For the ancient alien theorists who believe these stories, Antarctica might be the last place on Earth hiding evidence of the Anunnaki occupation. Cities, outposts, skeletons, abandoned spaceships, all of these could be hidden underneath a solid mile of ice. This ancient tale of extraterrestrial intervention raises intriguing questions about our planet's history. Could Antarctica, with its vast unexplored regions, hold the key to unlocking these mysteries? The search for evidence of the Anunnaki's existence continues, with the hope of uncovering the truth about our origins. Newsbabia and the Nazi UFO conspiracy. In the early years of World War II, Nazi Germany established a presence in Antarctica, claiming a territory they named Newsbabia. The name still applies to a small part of Antarctica that was explored by Germany in early 1939, and it's named after the expedition's boat, the Schwabenland. While the official purpose of the German expedition was to establish a whaling station, rumors persisted that the Nazis had a more sinister agenda. Some speculate that they built a secret military base, a refuge for Nazi leaders to escape the Allied forces. Some say that after the 1938-39 expedition, the Nazis returned to New Swabia with a much larger force. They brought with them soldiers and engineers and workers. Then they got busy constructing a massive military base that could be almost entirely self-sufficient. The base continued to function in Antarctica throughout the war. After the war was over and the Nazis were in deep trouble, those who could fled to this base. The top Nazi officials who weren't captured took boats to New Swabia and lived there carefree, if not a little cold, for the rest of their lives. Some say even Hitler managed to escape to Antarctica and live in this grand base after faking his own death. Here's what I can tell you what happened for certain according to the historical records. Germany embarked upon the German Antarctic expedition in December of 1938. The mission was led by Alfred Richter, who was a captain in the German Navy. The official purpose of this expedition was to find an appropriate area in Antarctica where Germany could build a whaling station. The Germans desperately wanted more whale fat so that they could make more whale oil. You might not know this, but whale oil used to be a hot commodity. Everybody needed whale oil for everything from margarine to soap and all things in between. When the war started, Germany was buying more than 200,000 tons of Norwegian whale oil. They didn't want to depend on the Norwegians anymore, especially since they were planning on, taking over Europe. The Germans wanted to get their own oil and also to scout for somewhere they might put a naval base. But when they reached Antarctica in 1939, they arrived in an area already claimed by Norway. The Germans didn't much care if Norway claimed it or not. They put their flags on the sea ice all along the coast anyway. This was classic Nazi Germany. The expedition established a temporary base. They spent a few weeks sending teams to walk along the coast and claim the hills and other landmarks in the name of Germany. There were 7 photographic survey flights sent out to search and secure the area. They took more than 16,000 aerial photographs. When the scientific team returned to Germany, the German government announced New Swabia. It was to be the German sector of Antarctica. But then, when they lost the war, they never mentioned it again. Since 1945, Germany has not made any territorial claim in Antarctica. But what happened to the New Swabia base? Nobody knows. That's the mystery. The conspiracy theory is that the US and UK have supposedly been trying to conquer New Swabia for years, fighting a covert war at the bottom of the planet. There have been strange claims that New Swabia was built on top of a hot spring that provides limitless energy and plenty of warmth. But honestly, it's probably closer to the plot of a James Bond movie than the truth. The impossible maps of Antarctica. A map discovered in the 1900s has created a controversial debate about what's really hiding in Antarctica. The map is a mystery because it shows the distinctive coastline of Antarctica, but it was made way before Antarctica was even discovered. The map is also unusual because instead of showing Antarctica covered in ice like you would expect, it's covered in a jungle. It was made in 1513 by Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis and survives to this day in Istanbul. This mysterious map is one of history's strangest artifacts. It also isn't the only one of its kind. Other cartographical charts have been found that show Antarctica as being a continent covered in thick vegetation only a few centuries ago. These maps are very strange because Antarctica has been covered with ice for many thousands of years. Why would cartographers represent it covered in vegetation? There is another map made by French geographer Philippe Wache in the mid-1700s. It accurately depicts the coastline of Antarctica with no ice on it. That's a fact. Whether Philippe knew Antarctica existed or just got lucky is what you have to decide for yourself. Then there was Laurent Fine, a French mathematician and cartographer born in 1494. He drew a map that also shows Antarctica without any ice. His version of Antarctica came complete with flowing rivers. How did 3 map makers all reach the same conclusion about Antarctica without ever seeing it? The only explanation that makes any sense is that they were copying much earlier maps of Antarctica, perhaps from thousands of years before. How do you explain these maps? Let me know in the comments.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
An ancient skull. The oldest human remains ever discovered in Antarctica were found in 1985. It was the skull of a mysterious woman found on Yamana Beach in Antarctica's South Shetland Islands. This skull belonged to an indigenous female from Chile who had died in her early 20s. She died between 1819 and 1825 at a camp created by seal hunters. Back in the day, hunting seals was big money. But the big mystery here is what exactly was this young woman doing at a sealing camp back in the early 1800s? There has been absolutely no documentation found revealing the woman's identity, but this random female's bones could play a huge part in territorial claims for the pristine wilderness of Antarctica as nations across the globe prepare to do what's necessary to take it over. The Antarctic Treaty System, which basically says that nobody has any right to claim Antarctica as their own until 2048, will soon run out. This treaty was signed in 1959 by the 12 countries whose scientists have been active on the continent. It is a type of promise that the continent shall be devoted to peaceful investigation and cooperation, and that any activity relating to mineral resources is prohibited. When the treaty expires, Antarctica could in theory be exploited. Since the oldest human remains in Antarctica belong to someone from Chile, the country will probably use her as an excuse to stake their claim, saying that they have had people in Antarctica longer than anyone else. No other old bones have been found on the continent as of yet. In less than 30 years, the fate of Antarctica could be changed forever. Right now, scientific research is thriving, but as the date gets closer, the treaty could begin to fracture as countries might be willing to fight to take it for themselves. Wildcard Volcano. Underneath the melting ice shelf of Antarctica lies a huge warm surprise. Scientists have found an unexpected volcano, and an active one at that. Scientists are saying that while rising temperatures are still a huge contributor to the Antarctic ice shelf melting, active volcanoes hidden beneath the ice may be acting like a wild card that are also helping the ice to melt faster. Believe it or not, West Antarctica alone is believed to be home to over 100 volcanoes, but scientists have been unable to find them all. It was during a survey in 2014 that a team of scientists from Britain and the US stumbled upon this one while investigating how warm ocean waters affect the ice shelf. Scientists used chemical data from water samples to reveal that the volcano is active and is currently heating the Pine Island Glacier, which just so happens to be one of the fastest melting glaciers in the area. It's important to understand that there have been no eruptions in Antarctica for over 2,000 years. However, that doesn't mean that one couldn't happen in our lifetime. The Antarctic ice sheet has been around for tens of thousands of years and has so far been unaffected by volcanic activity happening right underneath it, according to Rob Larder with the British Antarctic Survey. But if one of these volcanoes were to have a catastrophic eruption, it would mean an almost instantaneous melting of the Antarctic ice sheet and a subsequent rise in ocean levels that is unprecedented. Suspicious alien bunker. A discovery using Google Earth has revealed something strange hiding underneath the Antarctic ice, and the discovery has sparked theories of alien life forms. These latest images reveal an area of snow hiding what appear to be tubes woven in an intricate pattern. While the phenomenon could be natural, it might not be. The weird patterns stretch for miles and miles across the ice, baffling experts and enthusiasts alike. Some have claimed these tubes could be evidence of a massive alien structure hidden underneath the ice because they almost look like the grill of a giant radiator. Some have speculated that what we're seeing in the images is proof of an alien defrosting system, part of a much larger underground base, possibly installed beneath the ice thousands of years ago. As of right now, scientists believe it is a natural phenomenon, and very little else is known about it. Since these places are so remote, it's easy to spot all kinds of things via satellite, but it's much harder to see what it is in real life. Giant underground cavern. NASA recently shared that they have discovered a giant underground cavern in Antarctica that is nearly the size of Manhattan. The cavern is sitting where 14 billion tons of ice once dominated the landscape. All that ice has melted in just the last couple of years. Located on the Thwaites Glacier in West Antarctica, scientists have known about its degradation for many years. NASA's Operation Icebridge, a program which uses planes equipped with radar to fly across Antarctica and map glaciers and ice sheets, was the one to make the discovery. The radar used by NASA is so strong that they are able to see through ice to map the glacier all the way to the bedrock. Using this information, scientists are able to understand how quickly glaciers are melting and even what's happening far beneath them. In this case, radar revealed a gigantic cave. This cavern has opened up between the top of the glacier and the bedrock that it sits on. The cavern is probably filled with very warm air, and this has triggered quicker melting than previously anticipated. But you probably want to know what happens if the glacier melts. Pretty much Armageddon. When the glacier melts, the sea level will rise about 2 feet, and because the Thwaites Glacier holds back a huge portion of the rest of the ice sheet, more ice will quickly melt and the sea level will rise another 8 feet. That's 10 feet total. So if you have a house near the water, better start preparing. But what's really alarming scientists is how fast this hollow cavern appeared. It first revealed itself in 2012, but has grown in the last handful of years to the size of Manhattan. The football egg. The fossil of the second largest egg ever discovered on Earth was found in Antarctica. This egg was laid by an enormous sea monster and would have been about the size of a football. And while that might not seem impressive, it actually is. This is the largest soft-shelled egg ever found, and it probably belonged to a mosasaur 68 million years ago. To date, this is the only potential mosasaur egg ever found by scientists. According to senior researcher Julia Clark, working with the University of Texas at Austin, there is no other egg like this anywhere on the planet. It's not only exceptional in its size, but also in its structure. As for how the egg was found, it was discovered by Chilean researchers in a stream in 2011, just a couple hundred feet away from the remains of a massive mosasaur on Seymour Island in Antarctica. Yet even though the egg was found so close to the dinosaur, experts have not been able to 100% certify that the egg is indeed a mosasaur egg. They actually called the fossilized egg the Thing, after the horror movie from the 80s. The only other egg bigger than this one came from an extinct Madagascan elephant bird. With a name like elephant bird, you know this thing was huge. So far, the Thing has been the only egg ever discovered in Antarctica. But surely that will change as more ice melts and paleontologists are able to dig more fossils out of the ground. World War III fallout shelter. A mysterious military base has allegedly been spotted in Antarctica. This base is just shy of 2 miles long and consists of at least 22 structures. These structures have been revealed thanks to thawing ice in Antarctica, and some people are claiming they are secret installations built in anticipation of World War III. Conspiracy theorists claim that the structures revealed beneath the ice were funded by the globalist elites and will be used for them to take shelter when things hit the fan. The closest official station is 200 miles away from where these structures were spotted, so basically, they're in the middle of nowhere. Believe it or not, these structures were not spotted recently. The first clue came in 2001, when melting ice revealed the faintest outline of something man-made beneath the ice. Then, in 2009, these structures became more visible. In 2013, some people spotted a runway and an unknown operations center. There appears to be some kind of airport and a large building mostly covered in snow. Nobody knows who built the installation or what its purpose is, whether it's a forgotten Nazi stronghold or indeed an emergency bunker for the next big war. But one thing everyone can agree on is that it's definitely not a naturally occurring structure. Somebody built it, hid it, and now the ice is revealing it. And now for number 4, but first it's shout-out time! Want to give a big thank you to Chelsea Brothers and the girls. Thanks so much for supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, because why not? Mysterious hole. Besides enormous caverns and possible Nazi bases, now a huge hole the size of Kansas has recently been spotted in the Antarctic ice. The hole was first about 3,700 square miles, but within a short period of only 6 weeks, the hole grew to become 30,000 square miles. This kind of hole is known as a polynya, a huge pit of unfrozen ocean surrounded by solid ice. But what's really weird about this giant hole is that it appeared before in 1974, but then froze over and wasn't seen again until 2017. As of right now, scientists have no idea why the hole froze over and then opened back up. The best information we have comes from a team of scientists led by Diana Francis from New York University, who says that cyclones are behind this natural phenomenon. The scientific team used satellite observations to learn that cyclones and intense winds cause ice to be carried out of the region. On the Beaufort scale, these cyclones are Category 11. The winds carry off ice and open up massive holes that sometimes don't freeze up again. What's dangerous about this is that scientists believe cyclones will become more frequent in the future, and their winds are so strong that they rip apart the ice. This is almost as bad as the ice melting, since a hole that's too big won't freeze over again with the mild temperatures. Ancient artifacts. Scientists in Argentina discovered giant stone structures and other ancient artifacts estimated to be at least 4,000 years old while investigating a remote region of Antarctica. This discovery revealed the first physical evidence of an ancient civilization living on the continent of Antarctica ever. At the time the discovery was made, it was hailed as the most important archaeological find of the century. So what happened? Why have we barely heard about this? The team was led by geologist Scott Amundsen from Wyoming State University. The stone structure discovered by Scott and his team was roughly the size of an ancient Roman amphitheater. Researchers have also discovered the remains of a columned structure that could have stood nearly 100 feet tall. Thanks to the dry Antarctic climate, many of the artifacts were almost perfectly preserved. Some of these artifacts included balls made from seal hide, sticks that were used as some kind of tool, and coins depicting penguins and unidentified reptiles. But unfortunately for everyone, this story ran in Science magazine on April 1st, 1998, which is actually April Fool's Day. So the entire thing was an April Fool's Day science story. Why? This seems like something that could have happened, and it's 100% believable. Scientists do know that Antarctica was once a balmy forest, and considering ancient people lived as far south as Argentina, it wouldn't be a huge surprise if we eventually found ancient human bones buried under the ice, would it? I hate April Fool's Day. Remnants of a rainforest. 90 million years ago, dinosaurs roamed the Earth. During this time, Antarctica had no ice and instead was a warm rainforest. New scientific evidence has proved with certainty that Antarctica was a swampy forest bursting with life. Researchers made this discovery by using a giant drill to take a sediment core sample near the Pine Island Glacier. CT scans revealed amazing samples of pollen, forest soil, roots, spores, and much more. The pollen came from the first flowering plant ever discovered by humans so close to the South Pole. The soil came from the warmest period on Earth in the previous 140 million years. The surface of the ocean alone was probably 95 degrees Fahrenheit. The sea level, if you can believe it, was 558 feet higher than right now, and everyone's freaking out about a 2-foot sea level rise. Unfortunately, scientists have not been able to secure any concrete evidence about what the exact conditions were like at the South Pole during this time. But they do know that even during prolonged months of darkness, the swampy rainforest was still able to prosper at the South Pole, something that nobody could have imagined. Exotic creatures. Scientists have now discovered some strange exotic creatures living in Antarctica that have been able to survive over 30 ice ages. The incredible organisms were found thousands of feet above sea level in the Trans-Antarctic Mountains, a place where researchers almost never get a chance to investigate. Ian Hogg and Byron Adams had to use a helicopter to reach the dry peaks hundreds of miles from the South Pole, where they focused their attention on Mount Speed. It took only minutes for the researchers to discover the exotic creatures. All they had to do was look under rocks and ta-da! Dozens of pale, six-legged animals smaller than apple seeds were moving between the sandy grains beneath the rocks. These critters had antennae, they were soft and squishy, and after being exposed to the freezing air, they died. These creatures have been named Tulbergia, and they live under rocks all throughout the Trans-Antarctic Mountains. They are a type of springtail, something you can find millions of in your backyard. Springtails are excellent at breaking down organic material, but just how they have been surviving in the remotest mountains in the world for thousands of years is a mystery that scientists have so far been unable to explain. The interior of Antarctica covers a surface area larger than Mexico and the United States combined. 98% of it is covered in ice, and yet springtails, mites, and worms have all been found hiding under rocks and in the soil of the Antarctic mountains. Some say they are leftovers from 90 million years ago, when Antarctica was a lush jungle. Thanks for watching! Which discovery was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time! Bye!